everyone. A very warm welcome to another exciting episode of Psychology Talks. And today is the topic that which is sometimes talked about or mostly talked about, but people don't talk about that what challenges mothers faces. Usually they talk about that how beautiful this relationship is, but there are lots of struggles, lots of sacrifices go beyond behind these to make this relationship more beautiful. And we're going to talk about it. It is no doubt an amazing, a most beautiful relationship, but there is a lot behind it. There's a lot of women going through it from the time of conception to the kids, grow old. So we're going to talk about all these struggles today. And our guest, no other, and I'm sure a lot of people already know Valerie Probstfled. She is one of the dearest friend, and she's the author of the book "To Mom Is to Love," which is an amazing book. And she's also a nurse practitioner. She's the founder of "To Mom Is to Love," and she's doing amazing work. So let's welcome Valerie. Hello, Valerie. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And hello to all the audience out there listening to this live or to the replay. I just appreciate each and every one of you.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. I was so much looking forward to it. I love your book. And those who have not actually, just a second, those who have not purchased this book, please get this book as soon as possible. It's actually, sorry, it was the upside down, but it is one of my favorite because it's not just because it's written by Valerie, but it has very meaningful, deep insights, which I think which every mother can relate. So please get your copy, and I'm sure it will change your life. So let's begin our conversation. I've actually given a very brief introduction. So let's tell our audience about yourself.
Thank you so much, Ambreen. And thank you for your kind words about my book. I truly appreciate it. It's an absolute honor. And I have just loved getting to know you. And I really feel like this journey, it started when I was a child. And it's just so amazing kind of how the universe has kind of aligned to bring me to this to knowing you and to the book writing process. It's been just so wonderful. So, but to kind of go back, I will say that I wanted to be an A+ mom. I knew I was going to be an A+ mom because when I was a child, I did not have kind of like I didn't see smiles. I did not see what I felt like others appeared to be seeing, like where I just didn't. I felt like something was off, that there was a lot of yelling, there was a lot of frustration. And I knew I was going to be different. I knew I was going to be a different mom. And I was like, when I have kids, I'm not going to yell. I'm not going to do any of these things. I'm going to be amazing at it. And so I love healthcare. I became a nurse practitioner, worked mostly in pediatrics. Pediatric neurology was a big thing that I did. I absolutely love the brain and neuroscience. And I also learned how to talk to families and to kids, and like, what, I'm going to rock this. It's going to be great. I know everything there is to know about being a mom. But within 10 minutes, Ambreen, once my baby was born, my first, she was taken to the NICU, and I did not at all know what to do with that. I didn't study for that. And it just came at a complete shock, a complete surprise. And all the control that I thought I had, all the decades of preparation that I did, I felt like went out the window. And I had frustration. I had anxiety. And like I write about that in the first chapter of my book, of just like, what do I do with these emotions? Like, what do I do? I felt like I was just like, I was yelling at the staff. I was so frustrated that I couldn't see my baby. And I was far from a perfect mom. And so there was some shame in that. There was like a lot of shame. And I remember back in the NICU days, the nurses would come in, or the healthcare providers would come in and say, Mom, do you have any questions? Or Mom, you need to do this. And it was just like this, wow, everyone is calling me mom now. Like I almost like lost my name once I became once my baby was born, which was fine. I love the name Mom, and I planned on this for so many years and decades. But at the same time, it was just like, gosh, this name holds so much expectation, both for myself as I'm like, I need to be this A+ mom, and I'm clearly failing already. I'm not being perfect. And then society of like, what does society expect moms to be? And then like the medical staff, like everyone expected me to do something and to be everything. And there was no sleep there. I was worried. I was wanting to be with my baby and I couldn't rest, but like I didn't want to leave her. It was so many conflicting emotions. So I looked up, what is mom? What is this name? I love the etymology of words, Ambreen. Like it's just so much fun for me to look up like what words mean and where they can come from. And so mother is not only a title, obviously, or a name, but it's also a verb. And I thought that was really interesting when I looked that up. I'm like, oh, what is this verb to mother, to mom? And the verb to mother, to mom means to give birth, to allow one to rise, care for, or protect. And I thought that was interesting because if you think about what gives birth, what allows one to rise, care, or protect, and that's love. That's what, or at least for me, I felt like love, I can control that action. I can control loving in this moment or having fear in this moment. And I will say it took me a long time to really kind of realize that and to truly like kind of embrace that. But at the same time, I felt like that was with my journaling, I really was like, oh, that's just an interesting thing. And a little bit later, like 2 years later, once my baby was out of the NICU, she became this very verbose toddler. Like she was just, like I was trying my best to be still this kind of like perfect mom, I guess. Like I was like, well, I feel like that control kept being taken away from me. I was trying to work with all those emotions, but I felt like I was doing an okay job. I don't know. But then so I was a little concerned when, as a first time mom, I had a sitter come in, which she was great, but I also was so worried. I'm like, let me have a camera ready just because I don't know, like I have to do this new job and I want the sitter here. So anyway, all that to say that I accidentally left the camera running after the sitter left. And later that evening, and I talk about this in my book, later that evening, I scolded my 2-year-old. I don't remember what it was for. It was just like, she wasn't listening. I don't remember what it was, but I remember thinking like, I feel like I scolded her maybe a little too harshly because she said to me, Mom, I hate your angry face. I hate it. I hate when you yell. And I was thinking like, well, surely I wasn't as bad as my mom was, like in a way. But let me, as a flutist, I'm always assessing my performance, or like I was when I played music. I'm like, let me assess my performance here and make sure I'm not as bad as my mom. It's so eye-opening, Ambreen, that like I sounded, when I listened to that video, it sounded exactly like my mom. Like it was so powerful, and it still kind of gets me emotional thinking like, this is the mirror that was held up to me. And it was so kind of powerful in a way that I felt like my mom probably was doing the same thing, where she in her head didn't feel like she was yelling, or maybe there was a reason for this yelling, but she didn't have that opportunity to assess that, to have that mirror held up. But here I am seeing myself, and how can I change? How can I be different? Because it's one thing to know this and to know that love is an action and all of that, but if I don't actually start doing the action, working on this, I'm gonna continue that generational legacy. And that was really when I just decided to start writing my book, and to help not only others, but also myself, because I feel like, I have all this neuroscience background and I love the brain, and I talk a lot about that in my book, about the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex and all these reasons why we can yell and get frustrated in the moment. But what I feel like stands my book apart from others is that I'm practicing it in real time. Because again, we can say all day long that, oh, I want to do this and, react less and respond more. But if I'm not doing that in the moment, and if I'm not practicing, all my daughter or all my other kids will see is that angry face. And so that is truly what I wanted the goal of this book to be, is not only gaining that knowledge, but also applying that and working on that. And I am alongside the reader doing that in the moment with my young kids, and working on it every day and giving myself that grace and saying it, I'm not going to be perfect, but I can own that and say, I'm going to be imperfectly perfect. I can embrace imperfection. Kintsugi is a Japanese art form that there's cracks in the pottery and they honor those cracks with gold. And there's beauty in imperfection, there's learning in imperfection. And I can be working on, I can embrace that growth mindset. And in that way, I'm learning with my kids. And I can tell my kids that. And we're learning together with something. And I think that has made all the difference. And so, anyway, that's a long winded answer to your question, Ambreen, but I'm so passionate about all of it, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and share with your audience all that.
Yes, yes. What a wonderful, actually, or inspirational journey you have. So much relatable. I think what your journey sets you apart is that you took learning out of it and you turn it into something that can help others as well. The first part that you mentioned when you were sharing that, like every mother actually go through the same, I think, phase. And I can so much relate to what you said, that when you used to think that you can be an A plus mom, I used to have the same thinking, because being a psychologist, I said, oh my God, I know the psyche of the kids. I know that all those conditioning, and I know that how to actually transform their behavior, how to actually condition them with the positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. So I knew, even I had the I made kind of a strategy that, okay, this is how I'm gonna raise kids. But all of this actually went to the drain, or I would just say to the trash bin, when I became a mother. And then I realized, oh my God, this is not what I actually used to think, and the real experience is completely different. And that gave me realization as well, that actually what we read from all the theories, or what we know, that what it is going to be easy, but when we go through the experience, it is much more than what we have read. So that's exactly what is so much relatable. And when I was reading your book, it was so amazing that, as you said, that there are lots of references to the science and neurosciences. You talk about that, how, especially that you given reference to the Dr. Carroll, how we can change the mindset. And what I really, really like about your book is that you actually, when you are sharing those scientific knowledge, you actually give this practical example also. Like you also shared that the experience of the skunk, that how we were focused on the negative part, but it's just the moment that when you change your thinking, then you realize that even the bad smell can actually give you some learning, or you can just change the mindset. So I really love the way you actually make it so relatable, and so much understanding, that you can actually learn and you can relate to what you've been going through. So I really, really highly recommend this book, that those who are actually going through it. Yeah, I actually see this Courtney has joined, but somehow my LinkedIn is actually giving the name LinkedIn user. I don't know why, but thank you for actually writing the name, Courtney. Thank you.
Hi,
So
Courtney.
yeah, and so Courtney is amazing. I'm so looking forward to chatting with her soon. Anyway, so yeah, I was the question now. The next question is that you actually talk about that. This is about the redefining motherhood, right? You just as a
Mhm.
pioneering the new kind of mother. So tell us about it. That you've gone through all the struggle, face all the challenges. What I think all mothers go through, but how they can deal with all these challenges and how they can actually change it. So
Yeah.
just tell us a bit more about it.
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you so much, Ambreen. And I really identified with the pioneering a new kind of motherhood because For a variety of reasons, like I just really find the word pioneer so just inspiring, but also like in a trailblazing way. And growing up in the Midwest, in the Chicago area, and then kind of living in a couple of places, but ultimately now I'm back into the Chicago area. There is a lot of trails with sunflowers and butterflies that I would run on and sometimes like walk on in like a reflective way. And that's in early motherhood was so prevalent. And one day I was kind of thinking like, there's this trail that was meant to essentially mimic what the land looked like back in the day. And then there's an overpass. Like if you're walking on the trail with sunflowers and flowers, there's also a highway a little bit beyond the path that goes right above your head. And it made me think about mental back roads and highways. And it made me think about like, this is like so similar to the brain where like there's this overpass of a highway. And maybe that's like can be so much of when I have anxiety or frustration or something, like it's just such a quick reaction from the amygdala that fight, flight, or free is, regardless of if it's a false alarm or a real alarm. Like if we're running late, maybe something bad's going to happen if we're running late. So I'm going to start yelling or whatever it is. But there's other pathways. There's other ways to get to our destination that doesn't necessarily have to be a highway. I can trailblaze or in a brain sense, have neuroplasticity in a different part of my brain to take a mental back road and not necessarily yell if that's something I'm trying to work on. And not to say that, like, I mean, I feel like we're all human, right? Like we're gonna yell sometimes, but at the same time, having that awareness of, okay, if I catch myself with that, if I'm saying, oh my gosh, we're running late, guys, maybe instead of traveling that highway, I can have that awareness and say, let me be grateful for something right now that we're experiencing. Like I have gratitude for the fact that my kids are wanting to show me something. I have like a toy or something they're interested in, or being mindful that it's a beautiful day or there's snow outside, and that takes practice. And I felt like throughout my book, I tried to really break that down into practicing those different mental back roads of, having a mental back road of gratitude. And as you were saying before with the skunk, I talked about, there was a skunk one day that like sprayed my dog multiple times. And I was so frustrated that we had to do all these things on the weekend. But then I chose gratitude in the moment of just spending time with the kids and being grateful that my husband was helping with the dog. And also there's a mindful back road, like I was alluding to, with like just kind of enjoying the sun, looking outside, observing just the beauty that a garden can have and how flowers grow towards the sun and how they can be flexible as opposed to stiff. Nature gives us so much of that. And then also smiling, like there is so much of power in some simple things. And I really wanted to emphasize that as to the more I exercise these different routes in my brain, the stronger they get. And that can create a road that can trailblaze through the prairie, through the weeds into a path that can eventually become a different type of highway. And that's what I wanted to work on throughout the book. And some days are easier than others, some hours are easier than others. But the more I can do that, the more I can truly grow in that growth mindset that Carol Dweck talks about, and really that neuroplasticity.
Yes, yeah, I love that point, especially when you talk about the neuroplasticity. I think it's so important to realize that everything is in our control, and everything we actually experience is just the interpretation of our brain. I remember, like you also shared the example of that how the bee came to your car. It was so chaotic, right? But it's the thing is that how you respond to it. It all changes. It all changes your reaction, and that's why I often say that like remaining being calm in this chaotic situation is our superpower, because only then we can take the right action. Because when we actually when you also written this in your book that when we actually perceive this as a chaotic situation, our brain actually comes into the mode of fight or flight, right? So it takes up and then it start trying to create a, like, the emergency situation, trying to create some like, the creating like sorry, these, what do you say, that when it starts um, sharing all these, like the enzymes and all the neurotransmitters, goes into the body to,
Yeah.
make you alert to take some action. And that hyper state actually makes you more act instead of thinking. Whereas in chaotic situation, especially where the situations that we feel, even with our kids, or when even in our daily situation, is more like something when we need to think, not to run away from the situation. So that is very, very important that you actually even pointed out now, that at that point in time, the only way to actually take that road is to change your focus to more into the gratitude, like, to see the positive side, to see that how beautiful life is, and how, like as I said, how like your husband was helping, or your kids are there, so it's a blessing, and you see it as a positive thing. Then it calms down, it brings back your mind from chaotic state to, to the normal phase. So I love that part, definitely.
Thank you.
So yeah, I understand, like, I want to ask this, like, to a related question,
Sure.
that it is definitely a very important point, that we don't need lose that control, right? But it's very hard to do that. So what are your actually advice, that how we can train our mind to stay calm in that chaotic situation?
Sure. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It's a great question. And I feel like for me, I really, yeah, I had to work on lengthening my space that I talk about. Like, and I just love right now, I don't know if anyone can see, but there was a bizarre thunderstorm that just
Oh.
like blew through. And I thought that was a great visual for having, like, literally nature is providing us rain, and now the sun's coming out again. So let's say that was chaos, like there was rain right now, and or let's say, in our life there's a chaotic situation. People aren't listening, kids aren't listening, whatever that is, and that's where I can react, or I can respond. And when I'm reacting, I'm using that fight or flight, like we're talking about. But I really love Viktor Frankl, how he talks about lengthening the space between stimulus or reaction and response. And in that space lies our power to choose. And within that space lies our growth and our freedom. And I think that is so powerful to think about it in that way of lengthening the space between reaction and response. And so, how do I work on lengthening that space? And a lot of it is kind of just being aware that the amygdala is producing this fight or flight, and saying, okay, it is okay right now. I have these elevated emotions, this increased heart rate, this increased respiration. It's difficult to focus on anything else right now than whatever it is. Like the bee in the car, for example. There's a bee in my car, but how can I let those feelings pass? Like, for example, like with the rain behind me here, just allowing it to pass and visualizing it as like thoughts flowing down a river or whatever that is, letting go of that and lengthening that space. And then it allows my prefrontal cortex, that more logical side of the brain, to go back into the game. Because all animals share this amygdala, that little tiny almond in our brain. They all share it. But what makes humans unique is that we have a prefrontal cortex. We're able to say, is this real or is this not real? Is this it? And that is helpful from an evolutionary standpoint. I don't want to think about, a bear chasing me, or an insect with a needle trying to get to me. Like, I don't want to think about that. But at the same time, so much of our fear now is based on something that's not actually in the moment. It's something that I'm ruminating about in the past, or something in the future. Like if we're running late, I may have something may happen, or maybe something did happen. So my amygdala is like, oh, false alarm, or my amygdala doesn't think false alarm, it just thinks alarm. Okay, I'll alarm. But it produces that same exact feeling, which is normal, but at the same time, it's not necessarily an actual thing I need to be responding to. I think so. It's that awareness, allowing those feelings to pass, and then allowing my prefrontal cortex to then come back online essentially and say, that right now, let me choose gratitude right now, or let me just allow this feeling to pass and be mindful and look out the window. Or maybe I could tell a story about it. Maybe I can, share this narrative in a different way of, I remember like one time I experienced X, Y, and Z, and like, this is what happened when we were running late, and sharing that with the kids, so there's different types of mental back roads that can help me practice, have thinking more with that prefrontal cortex when my amygdala is alarmed, if that makes sense.
Yes, I think you brought like a very wonderful point is that first is the awareness, like, you
Yes.
need to know that, what are you responding. And actually, I go back to when you said at the beginning that uh, to become aware, you actually filmed your
Yes.
own video. I mean, that requires, I would say, a lot of courage, even to see that, and then again to acknowledge that, what are your mistakes. This actually also tells us that you want to improve, you need to see something. So one thing is something that you need to be aware, you need to be willing to change yourself. Unless and until you don't realize that there is something that you need to improve upon, you will keep doing it. So this is very, very important. And then awareness, and after that you mentioned that we need to practice also, right? You need to see that, okay, this is happening, how you can control it. And so the wonderful advice. Now I've come to another question that, like, mothers actually feel very much overwhelmed. They go through a lot in a day, and they juggle with lots of responsibilities, roles at the same time. Once, like, if you are a working mom, and of course you are getting maybe a client or call from the client, or you're going into a meeting, and then at the same time your kids are also calling you, or they're hungry, or they need something. So there are lots of, like, the juggling is happening simultaneously, that actually creates a toll. And that's why it creates kind of a burnout. How do you recommend, like, what advice would you give that how we can deal with this, because if we keep doing it, it is eventually leading to burnout. How we can prevent that?
Absolutely. I think that's a great question. And I think that that's so relevant because we're always juggling so many things. And there's so many balls, and like the balls are flying out the window, or God really knows what's happening to all these balls in the air. And
Yeah.
it is so easy to get burned out with everything and all the responsibilities. At the same time, I think it's like really that message that I would say, like, we all say, but I don't know if we're really practicing it as much as we should, of the when you're on an airplane and giving your oxygen to your to yourself, and then to the child or whoever's sitting next to you, because that is so true. If our cup is not, if it's empty, it is so hard to give to others, like when it's low. But when we can fill our cup up, that is when we can provide more for other people. And I think that recharging is so essential. And that doesn't necessarily have to be something big. Like, I feel like, for me, through this whole process of writing, I really wanted to figure out what are my values and how can I live a life that is in line with my values, and also that helps recharge me. Like, for example, I love to explore and to travel. I love doing that, but also at the same time, exploring and traveling doesn't have to be necessarily going far away. Like, I can go and take a hike, like just in the woods that are by my house, and I can bring my kids with me if I want to, or I can go alone if someone's able to watch them, or if they're at school or whatever. But all that to say is that when I do those things for me, it helps fill my cup up. And I know, like, when we would go on hikes, like when I was with my kids, we would go try to explore things, look for hearts in nature, or other things that I feel like you can do. You can fill yourself up with these little things, and it doesn't have to necessarily go on like this elaborate 3-day long like spa, which would sounds amazing. But at the same time, like, there's just these little things throughout the day. I know some people that I've talked to, some moms, they'll set aside like 10-15 minutes just for whatever that is to fill their cup up. And it's really is about those little things. And I think, so Gretchen Rubin talks about the days are long, but the years are short, and really being mindful. Like, that's what sometimes gets me through it. Like, the days are so long, especially it's the summer right now here in the Chicago area. it doesn't get dark until like 9 o'clock at night. And my kids are getting older. They want to stay up and I am exhausted. But just remembering that, this is a fleeting moment in time. And I think that just kind of helps to be mindful and just to kind of embrace the simplicity. I think we sometimes can get overwhelmed by we have to do this, this, and this for our kids, which I think is so, that's so lovely. And at the same time, it's okay just to sit and it's okay to be still. And sometimes those are just the most beautiful memories when you're just doing that. So that would be my some of my advice that like I would give to others and stuff that I work on all the time as well. I feel like we're always like, going through, like we have better days, better hours, and we're helping each other out. And I think that's another key thing of having that community of other women, other moms, because we need each other. We need that community. And it is just so helpful to have some type of village. And even if it isn't like, maybe if you don't have friends or family in the area, or whatever that is, there's online, there's so many things out there now that I feel like, I have a community, it's To Mom is to Love, and I know you have a community. There's so many things that thinking outside of the box, I feel like, in that community is so important.
Yes, wonderful advice, Valerie. I think that is the two things you talk about. It basically, I love that point that you brought, that days are short and days are long and years are short. So I mean, it's so true that even if I look back, I feel that, oh my God, when we actually celebrate birthdays of our kids, we say, oh my God, our kids have actually grown that all old, and it is like time has gone so fast. So that moment, I think, when we are juggling with lots of responsibilities and roles, we are not realizing that that moment's not going to come back. We need to live that moment, and I think that is the most precious moment. And if we start living in that moment, then we realize that, how beautiful that moment is, because rest of the things can stay or can wait, but that beauty can only is lasting for that moment only. So we need to be present in that moment. And the other thing that you also talk about, that, we need to be, I would say that, not very harsh to ourselves, and give us a space that, okay, this it's happened. Okay, there are lots of things happen. You need to just take a pause and then sit and then, calm yourself down and do something that you love. And the other thing, yes, and they are actually the third thing also, the community part. I think this is so important. That I feel that human beings are social beings. They need like one another. They cannot live in isolation. So, when especially mothers going through all these challenges, it's so important to have someone with whom they can share. And when you have that kind of a friend or maybe a family member, or as you said, that even the online community, they can give a lot of support. uh, Otherwise it becomes it we won't be able to do justice to ourselves and to our kids as well. So it's very, very important to have that compassion to ourselves, so we can give to others as well, especially to our kids. So this is really, really, really important. I love that point.
Oh, thank you so
Okay.
much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah. I also, like, now I know there are lots of questions. I've just pointed at it now. That it's basically, when, especially where these self compassion moment, and that's what doing through. But sometimes we don't realize that how to take care of our mental well being. I know that this is like you talk about this, that we uh, take out some time, but it's still like, when we go through it, what else we can do it, especially when we feel like very much overwhelmed by this, what
Mhm.
other activities we can do.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, I think, for me, and I talk about in my book, oh, there were some situations that, when I was writing it, I was in some moments of like just true overwhelm, I would say. And for me, like writing always has been therapeutic, but like at the same time, what I wrote about, I felt like helped me in a way think about it in a different perspective. And I think it really, um, nature really helps me when I get overwhelmed. And I feel like the trees and just things in nature can show us how to ground in a way that I don't know if I could get if I was in outside almost, or at least for me, that's the case. So when I go outside, I think about like, okay, these, for example, I think it was Dr. Elia Gregores. I loved his example of a palm tree versus, I think it was an oak tree, but how those trees can be more resilient, palm trees in a storm, as opposed to oak trees because they have the ability to bend. And so I think nature really can help me. And to know that, like, in the fall, I talk about this a lot because I think it's just such an important perspective to think about when you're in a moment of overwhelm or loss of hope or something, is that the fall is so beautiful. We travel far and wide to see the fall colors. But really how those colors are produced is because of decreased light. It's because of darkness. It's because of coldness, because the chlorophyll in the summertime, as you can see behind me right now, it's so green, and the green is beautiful, but it's not the true colors of the leaves. The true colors of the leaves are like the oranges or the yellows. I mean, it's like certain pines and all that. There are some greens, but there are so many that they are being masked by the chlorophyll producing food, but it's that decreased light, that decreased sun that is producing beauty. And I think knowing that lows, they're hard, but at the same time, we're going through transformation. Like I love starfish, for example, like on the beach, they'll wash up sometimes, and sometimes they appear broken and they're missing a limb, but they're actually regrowing it. Like they're not broken, and they're growing something new. And it's those important reminders for me that, like we do go through ebbs and flows in this life. But at the same time, there's such a beautiful community on this planet, as well as with other humans, that I think is just always there to remind us that. And if we pause and really take that in, then we can truly remember, that, or know that we're not alone in this world.
Yes, wonderful. I love that. I truly love that. Actually, when we go through the lows, we need to remind ourselves that this is just a phase and it's going to get over. And as you said, that nature is a big reminder that when the tree is in the fall, those beautiful colors of like yellows and orange and shades, it's just a phase, and it's going to go back to like maybe the green shades in the summertime or in springtime. So I love that. I know that this topic is so dear to you, and of course, as a mother, it is very dear to me as well. And we can talk about it on and on. But I know that we are coming to the end of the show. So, what one piece of advice would you like to give to our audience today to be a better mom?
I would say to embrace the imperfection, that we're all doing the best that we can. We are all perfectly imperfect, and to choose love in this next moment. You can either choose love or you can choose fear. And just, it's those baby steps, and really just embracing the present moment. We can travel. Our brain is an amazing time machine. It can travel to the future and to the past, but it's a lonely time machine. And so if we truly want to be present, if we truly want to be with our family, with our friends, it's living in that present moment. So that's what I would say.
Yes, I love that. I love this example that it's a time machine
Yeah.
and it's a lonely time machine. Yes, we can only be there in the future or in the past, but that would be alone. But what we can enjoy the moment with others is the present moment. I love that. I truly love that. So thank
So
you so much for joining. And those who are watching or listening to our show live or as a recording, please, if you want to get in touch with Valerie, she's very active on LinkedIn. Just a second, where is it? Yeah. So you can connect with her, or if you want to order her book, it's available on Amazon. I highly recommend to take her book. And any other way, like where you are active? I think you're also on Insta, you're on Facebook, and any other like media you're using, which you would like to inform to our audience.
no, you got it. I'm mostly on LinkedIn, Instagram,
Yes.
and I love being on LinkedIn, Instagram. I mean, I love to connect in whatever way. So I love connecting with people. So feel free to reach out to me there. You can always send me an email. And I have my podcast, my book, and all of that on my website, tomomistolove.com. So I really appreciate all your kind words and your support. And I just would love to connect with you if we haven't already connected.
Yes. That would be one. So thank you so much for your time, for sharing insight. Matthew has joined. Thank you so much, Matthew. You're a bit late, but we're just wrapping up. But you can watch the show on the recording either on LinkedIn or YouTube or on Facebook. So, anyways, thank you so much for Courtney for joining and or the other audience that you joined our show today. Thank you so much and have a great evening. Bye.
Thank you so much, Amberine. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.